Today we have a very special guest, hermeneuticist Peter Kling. I've been personally a student of hermeneutics, or the study of prophecy as embedded in sacred texts, for about 40 years, as I think Peter has also. And so it's a great privilege to be with him. For those of you who may not know, hermeneutics is a noble art. Sir Isaac Newton, the father of modern linear physics, was an advanced hermeneuticist, if that's the word. And
I believe so.
Yeah. And so I asked Peter if he would join us today, kind of a bit more than halfway through 2013, for a discussion on a multidimensional forecast for the years 2013 through 2017, which may be significant dates from a hermeneutical point of view, and in terms of the transition that we are experiencing here in our 3D time-space hologram on planet Earth. So with that introduction, Peter, I'd like to turn it over to you. Could you walk us through, over the next, hour, a bit less, a bit more, how you see the years 2013 to 2017 unfolding in terms of the particular science or various lenses that you look through? I know that some people have called you, quote, the Einstein of biblical prophecy. So we're going to hang that title on you for the next little while.
Well, thank you. To quote Einstein, science without religion is lame, but religion without science is blind. Mm-hmm. So, he hit the nail on the head with that one. I don't look at this issue from a religious viewpoint, however. I am well educated in the scriptures. I was taught not religion, but I was taught the scriptures and the history and prophecy that went along with them, actually before I was 5 years old. It's been a long portion of my life. I loved science, and a paradox which happened at the age of 9 sent me down the scientific trail as well. So I started viewing the scriptures from a very different viewpoint when I was reached a certain point, about the age of 22 or 23. I started looking at the scriptures through a pure scientific viewpoint to see what I can come up with. And all of a sudden, the answers started to unlock themselves. You need to remove the religious factor out of the way and start looking at what it says. And what you find is that the Bible is actually the first book of exopolitics. It covers 6,000 years of extraterrestrial involvement in human history. And it starts right from the book of Genesis, where we get the story of the serpent tempting Eve to eat this fruit. Now, exactly how accurate or how metaphorically this actually is, we don't know. But, I try to look at everything from a total practical standpoint. If I had to prove how this happened, and let's say it was a genuinely true story, what was the mechanism in order for this to happen? And so I started the whole process of learning the scriptures over again, which leads me to a very interesting thing. When you look at the creation of the human race, you get a very specific order. God says, let us make man in our image. Okay, who's he talking to? And then he says, let us make them male and female, and we give them subjection of the whole planet. that they may have subjection over everything. Everything that has seed is good for them to eat. And it says that's the end of the sixth day. Now, in the second chapter, it goes a little bit more into detail, and we find this out. God says, it's not good for the man to be alone. I'm going to make a helper for him. So what happens? He causes a sleep to come over the man. He opens up the flesh, removes a tissue sample, and he takes this tissue sample and proceeds to genetically engineer a woman from it. And Adam knows this, because when Adam sees this woman, he says, at last, this is flesh of my flesh and bone of my bone. This one came from man, I shall call her woman. Interesting. A record of genetic engineering right in the beginning of Genesis. We go a little further, we get the first prophecy, and we find out, this is after they ate the proverbial fruit, but there's a prophecy. It's in Genesis 3:15, and it says this. It says, I shall put enmity between, speaking to the serpent, it says, God says, I shall put enmity between you and the woman, and between your seed and the woman's seed. Whoa, stop. Two different seeds. We have two different classes of people on this planet. A class of people who are totally in control, who claim to be the royalty, who try to trace their lineage back to the earliest of dates, even back to Egypt. And we have a people which is under their subjection. A people who is downtrodden. And when we look at the rest of the prophecy, it says, you will bruise him, speaking of the seed, you will bruise him in the heel, but he will bruise you in the head. Now, a bruise in the heel is superficial. It's painful. Try walking around with a bruised heel. But a bruise in the head is deadly. And so this, fast forward, this is the first prophecy that we get. We get a prophecy of Yahweh and the woman's seed and the serpent's seed. Two different genetic groups.
Yeah. Could I just jump in here?
Sure, absolutely.
With a technical note, because I know that you use Yahweh in one sense, which is source, kind of the source, the source that creates all that is, and there are other viewers who use Yahweh in a more narrow sense as an extraterrestrial who may have been named in some particular chronicles. And I wanted to clarify that. One of
the earliest parts of my education was to learn what the name actually means. Mm-hmm. And Yahweh actually means he who causes to become.
I see.
Interesting. So now there are other interpretations, and people will break down the letters, and you can come up with some very interesting correlations between the name Yahweh and the name Yeshua. Now, Yeshua, or Jesus, means salvation is in Yahweh. So it's interesting, the meanings of the names. So when we could also substitute source, but there's a reason for the use of the name Yahweh, and this gets personal because we're dealing with two different seeds. We're dealing with the serpent seed, and we'll identify that in a minute, but we're also dealing with the God seed, the seed of the woman, mm-hmm. And those are the people who are standing up for the truth and what is right. Those are the people who are teaching other people what is going on and being aware. The serpent seed is connected to the reptilian agenda, and that brings us where? Back to the families, the royal families that claim to have rulership over this planet. So follow the money trail, and it takes us right back to the source of all evil, the love of money.
Right.
So it's interesting. This is just some background information.
Sure.
But we're interested in really what's going on in the next couple of years. And we saw something fantastic happen this year. It almost was shocking to me personally. But we saw, for the first time in over 600 years, the Pope of the Vatican, the Pope of the Holy Roman Catholic Church resign. And we get a new Pope, Petros Romanos, who is installed on 3/13/13. Interesting, significant date. That date happens to be very significant to me because I was irritated with somebody back in 2010, in October of 2010, and I said, yeah, I understand 10, 10, 10, 11, 11, 11, 12, 12, 12. I said, but what we need to be careful of is 3, 13, 13, and 4, 14, 14. And when I said it, I didn't even know why I said it. I was angered, and I just reached in and pulled something out. Okay, well, that's what happened in 3, 13, 13. What is going to happen on 4, 14, 14? That's a good question. Before we answer that, let's go back 200 years ago. We're going to do a little history lesson here. We all know that in 1812, the United States found itself at war, the War of 1812. But what most people don't know is what started that war. And what happened is, we need to go back one more year earlier, and in 1811 we find that Congress refused to renew the charter for the First Bank of America, a Rothschild establishment. And in 1812 we went to war with England again. Where the legend is that Amschelmeyer Rothschild said to King George, do you want your colonies back? I'll finance it. And so that's what started the war. Now, it ended in 1815, okay? What happens in 1816? The First Bank of America is no longer around, so they established the Second Bank of America, a Rothschild enterprise, and Congress gives them another 20-year charter, which that they actually lose at the hands of Andrew Jackson, and they regain it back at the hands of Woodrow Wilson in 1913. Interesting. But let's look at what else is going on. In Europe, we have the Napoleonic Wars that are going on, and Napoleon has pretty much destroyed all of Europe. He's made his way into Russia, and he's met defeat there, and now he's coming back, and he's ready to get involved with the Battle of Waterloo with Wellington. And while this is going on, you have the First Congress of Vienna forming, which is trying to piece together what has happened here in Europe and reallocate property, reallocate lands, draw new boundaries, and try to get Europe together under a one system rule, essentially a one world government, all ruled out of Vienna through the Vienna Congress. Well, the problem with that idea was that Tsar Alexander I, who Napoleon was defeated by, was not under control of any of the other banks. The Rothschilds had gained control of the Bank of France, they gained control of the Bank of Germany, and with the early news of Wellington's defeat of Napoleon, they were able to do the first insider trading deal, and through that they captured the Bank of England, and that's what led to Meyer Amschel Rothschild saying, I care not who sits upon the crown, let me have the money and I'll make the decisions what goes on. I'm paraphrasing here, but that's pretty much what he said. So here, let's go fast forward again. Now, before we fast forward, something interesting happens when Tsar Alexander says, no, I'm not going for this one world government. He gets a very interesting curse put upon him and his family, and that curse is that it was Meyer Amschel Rothschild who told him, my descendants will wipe your descendants off the face of the earth. Now we can fast forward. Here we are at 1913, and we have the Federal Reserve Bank established in the United States, and the first entry by Rothschild Foundation, directly by Rothschild Foundation, to control the economy of the United States. We also find ourselves saddled, well, not us actually, the United States, but we find the world saddled with the First World War breaking out in 1914. Now, this is significant. This is very significant because here is where biblical prophecy meets 20th century history. through calculations that you can do in the book of Daniel. There's a couple of different timelines, but you can actually calculate out a time period which would bring you to the year 1914 as the establishment of what we would call the kingdom of Christ. Now everybody's going to run down the path saying, oh, he's talking religion. No, we're not talking religion. I'm going to put it quite plainly. Jesus never said anything that he was going to start a new religion. Jesus was an extraterrestrial life form put into a human body with perfect DNA. If you look at the account, there was an extraterrestrial, an angel called Gabriel, that told Mary, guess what, Mary? You've been artificially inseminated. And by the way, it's the Son of God. Now people say, oh, that's preposterous, but we'll listen to somebody who claims to have been abducted by aliens and been inseminated by them and have the child taken at several months old. And then we also get stories of cattle mutilations where they cut out the uterus. Now, isn't it strange that a cow's uterus will grow virtually any kind of life form that you stick in it? Makes you start to wonder about this whole alien artificial insemination thing and the Virgin Mary. Well, we get this story. You know, it's interesting. Jesus said, I didn't come to bring peace to the world. He said, I came to put a sword in it. A sword. And what else does he say? When he's standing before Pilate, just hours before he's ready to be put to death, he says, my kingdom is no part of this world. What world was his kingdom part of? And so again, we take this off-planet. It's an off-planet situation. It's not a religious situation. Jesus said, I didn't come to change the law. I came to fulfill the law. In other words, he was going to end that Mosaic law. It was over. It was fulfilled. Now we go on to a new paradigm. A lot of people miss that, and the church took full advantage of it and married, or essentially took Mithra or Saturn worship and married it together with Christian names, and nothing really changed except those holidays got Christian names. Do the research on it. Every church holiday you can find an origin which is not Christian at all or connected to anything to the first century Christians or ancient Hebrews. Be that as it may, back in the 20th century, we have something really interesting happen, the First World War. Now, there's actually two prophecies in Revelation, and one is put before the other. We get the prophecy of the four riders of the apocalypse, as they're known, or the four horsemen of the apocalypse. And the first rider is always called, or I shouldn't say always, is misnamed as the Antichrist, not the Antichrist. The first rider is on a white horse, white meaning purity. He has a crown, which means he is ruling as king. He has a bow in his hand, but no arrow. The arrow has been shot. Now, let's go forward a few scriptures. We come to Revelation 12, where it tells us that Michael and his angels, and keep in mind, this is written in text that is 2,000 years old, fought the great dragon and its angels. And the dragon did not prevail. Neither was a place found for them anymore in, guess where? In heaven, it says, but we can calculate that would be the non-three dimensions of the 10-dimensional multiverse in which we reside in. So heaven being an unseen different dimension of 7 dimensions, which could actually be a couple of different dimensions when you look at all of them stacked together. Interestingly enough, according to superstring theory, the 7 dimensions can exist without our 3 physical dimensions, but our 3 physical dimensions cannot exist without these 7 spatial planes. So which came first? The 7 spatial planes came first, and then the Big Bang, or the 3-dimensional universe that we live in. So this war that breaks out, it says that there was not room found for this satanic or Luciferian creature, this great dragon, and down to the earth it was cast, and it drags a third of the stars down with it. And there's a warning given. It says, woe to the earth, for the devil has been cast down to you, knowing he has a short amount of time, and he has great anger. Now, what happens in 1914? We get the First World War. Let's take a short look at history. Up until the beginning of the First World War, all wars were carried on either on horseback or on foot. And the same thing starts with the First World War, but it ends mechanized. And warfare becomes more mechanized and becomes more scientific, and in a span of from let's say 1915, to make the calculations easy, until 1945, a span of 30 years, we go from a horse-drawn war to an atomic age. Where does that technology come from? The first flight at Kitty Hawk didn't go much more than 90 feet, less than the wingspan of a 747. And in 60 years later, we put a man on the moon. And that's the official story. We don't know what the official story is as far as Mars goes. We know what we've been told by people who claim to have been there. Several people. But we don't know what the official story is because they're not going to tell us that one. So let's go back. We have this war that breaks out here on the Earth, becomes extremely deadly. And what happens at the end of that war? Through the Paris peace talks, we have the birth of the League of Nations. Now, interestingly enough, Woodrow Wilson writes the charter for the League of Nations, but the United States Congress refuses to join because it's a European thing. It's a European club. We just got our nose bloodied by those Europeans, and we're done. We don't want to join their club. It was the attitude that was going on during that time frame. You got the potentially most powerful nation on the face of the planet, and it's not going to join the club. What are we going to do about this? Now, the other thing that's interesting that happens during the First World War, we also have the Bolshevik Revolution. And in the Bolshevik Revolution, the Tsar's family is wiped off the face of the earth. Russia becomes communist, and a purging starts in Russia, the likes of which have never been seen before. Some researchers believe that as many as 100 million people were sent to the death camps of Russia. Basically about a third of the nation. That story repeats for China, and we probably most know it best in Cambodia with the killing fields, where literally a third of the population of Cambodia was put to death under a regime change. Whoa, that's pretty steep. So if we are looking at some sort of a regime change, because let's look back, we had a major event. We were forced into a major war in 1914, which results in this one world political entity. But it's not quite strong enough. But we have the basis of it, the system for it. And now here's where the prophecies start to meet. Go to Revelation 13, and it talks about a beast, a seven-headed, ten-horned wild beast that ascends out of the sea of turmoil. These beasts in Revelation are very interesting because the seven heads would represent the seven world powers: Egypt, Assyria, Babylonia, Medo-Persia, Greece, Rome, and the Anglo-American dual world power. Now, pretty much we still work for the Queen, but the United States is the supreme world power, and that was proved during the First Gulf War, which is also another part of the prophecy. So here we have a setup that's going on. We have the seeds of this wild beast, the 10 horns symbolizing the 10 seats of power of the world. Rome gets 2 for Constantinople, Medo-Persia gets 2 for Constantinople, one for the Medes, 1 for the Persians, and Great Britain and the United States each have a horn each, even though they're represented by one head. And this is the representation of all of the earthly governments that have ever been tried since the first world power of Egypt, and none of them have worked. But they keep on trying. We find out that there's an 8th king, which comes up in Revelation 17, and we'll get to that shortly. But here we have the seeds planted. Now, when you read the account in Revelation, it says that this wild beast gets a head stroke, a death stroke, and they believe that it looks like it's not going to make it. And that's what happens during World War II. we get a death stroke to the League of Nations. But it emerges more powerful as the United Nations. Now, there's also another beast, a two-horned beast, which is talked about in this section of Revelation, and it's a beast that looks like a lamb, but it speaks like a dragon. Now, horns are typically kingdoms. That's why there's 10 horns on that seven-headed wild beast. So this lamb has two kingdoms, Great Britain, the United States. And it's interesting what the scripture says. It says that this lamb, this beast, was able to perform great signs, even calling fire down from heaven, just like it did in Nagasaki and Hiroshima, just like it did in Dresden, Germany, and in Tokyo, where those cities were literally burned to the ground with fire from heaven. Interesting. It goes on and it talks about one other thing. It says that this two-horned beast that looks like a lamb of peace builds an image, makes an image to the wild beast, the seven-headed, 10-horned wild beast, and it breathes fire into this beast, and this beast forces everyone to worship it, and those who refuse, it kills. And it requires the mark of a man. It says the number of 666. Now, there's a lot of controversy about this, and this is where the Antichrist comes in. The Antichrist, I'm going to say, is not one particular person. It's a system. It's a satanic system. It's a system that is against the idea of a Christ, the King of Kings, the Lord of Lords, as is said in Revelation 19, which commands the armies of the heavens. Are these the same armies that cast out this Luciferian reptile, these reptilians from the other dimensions, and now they're kept here on prison planet Earth in 3 dimensions? Yeah, same one. Same one. We're dealing with the extraterrestrials here. Take your head out of the religious end of this and look at the extraterrestrial end. Now, what can we look forward to? 1913 gave us a new monetary system, essentially, thank you to the Federal Reserve Bank. When we look at the economic system around the world, we've seen Greece fall economically, we've seen Spain fall, we've seen Italy fall, we've seen Cyprus fall, we've seen Portugal fall. The rest of the European Union countries are on shaky ground. And what was interesting about Cyprus is a give back. The people in Cyprus lost almost half of their money to settle their bailout. The European Union came in and said, thank you very much, see you later. Could that same thing happen here? Oh yes, it could. And the economists are saying, get out of the market by September. When you listen to the smart people who are talking about what's going on in the world economy, they're saying get out by September. Something's going to happen. Gee, what usually happens in September? Well, I remember in 2001 we had September 11th, and that kind of stuck with us. Last year, September 11th, we had the Benghazi situation where we lost an ambassador, and which created a major scandal for our then Secretary of State and our current president. So we're dealing with synchronous numbers here that this evil force likes to have. But most significant, what we've seen, I think, or prophetically, is Petros Romanos taking the Vatican. And this is the first time that we've had a Jesuit pope take the seat. And this kind of completes the circle of power. I want to digress back here about 1,000 years or so. The Knights Templar emerged, and they were very successful in their crusades against the Middle East. When they got to Jerusalem, they did far worse than what General Titus did. They laid siege to the city and they killed everyone, Christian, Jew, or Muslim, didn't make any difference, and they started digging. How would they know that there was something worthwhile to dig for? The last people that were there that could have buried something were the same people that General Titus took back to Rome in the 1st century. They were the last inhabitants of the ancient city. So it would have been their descendants that would have known to go look for something buried there. Now it's interesting, when we look at the different texts that are consolidated for us within the Gospels and within the Christian Greek scriptures, the one that I find very interesting, more interesting than a lot of the others, is this one that Stephen says. He's standing before the Jewish Supreme Court, and he quotes the prophet Amos, who is an Old Testament prophet, and he says, "Was it to me to whom you worshipped those 40 years in the wilderness, O Israel? No, it was to the tent of Molech and to the star of the god Raphan to whom you worshipped and made images those 40 years." Notice Molech and Raphan, the 6-pointed star and the 5-pointed star, the hexagram and the pentagram. These became very intertwined symbols within the Knights Templars religion. Let's call it that. And it's actually what got the church on their case and finally put an end to the Knights Templars, because the Knights Templar was a different brand of Molech worship that was competing with the church. Here we are, 2013, and the Jesuits, who have been linked back to the Knights Templar, are now in charge of the Vatican. And installed on a very interesting date of 3/13/13. So what happens on 4/14/14? Well, 4/14, the 2014 we can call, and 2015 for that matter, we can call the occulting of the moon and the sun. When I say the occulting, there's an interesting set of events which occur, and this has never happened before in the history of our Gregorian calendar. At least not that I can find it. If somebody can find it, I'd be more than happy to say, yep, you're right. But in 2014, on April 14th, that coincides with Passover, which is the Hebrew month of Nisan, and the 14th day. That's never happened. Now, there's a difference in timekeeping here between the Hebrew calendar and the Gregorian calendar. They almost never match up with anything because one runs on a solar basis, the other one is lunar. But here in April, the Hebrew day starts at sundown. So at sundown on April 14th starts Nisan 14 or Nisan 14. And Nisan 14 ends on April 15th with the first of what is actually going to be here 6 eclipses, 4 lunar, 2 solar, all on Hebrew holidays over the next 2 years, and this has never happened. They have the blood moon. The last time the blood moons all lined up was in 1967 during the 7-Day War, the year of the 7-Day War. But this is how these occult moons show up, and the reason I'm calling them occult is because they're covered. If you were going to do something covered, covert, you would look for an occult sign to do it by. April 15th is Passover 2014. I had mentioned that. Nisan 14 goes into April 15th, starts on April 14th. October 8 is the Festival of Tabernacles, again a full lunar eclipse, a blood moon. On March 20th, which is Nisan 1st, the first of Nisan on 2015, we have a total solar eclipse on Passover, which will be April 4th in 2015, again, a blood moon, a full lunar eclipse. In September 13 of 2015, there is the Festival of Trumpets, and this happens on September 13, and that is a partial solar eclipse. And then on September 28th, we have, again, the Festival of Tabernacles, and there is, again, a full blood moon. So, what are the chances that all of these ecliptic events happen on Hebrew holidays? You tell me. I think they're pretty astronomical myself. I can't find anything that lines up like this in history. Like I said, you can find the 4 blood moons in 1967, but all of this, the way that it's laid out, whoa. So we're going to see something going on. Now, there's also a prophecy in Ezekiel, it's Ezekiel the 4th chapter, where It's a 390-day prophecy, which just happens to be a 13-month Hebrew calendar count. And there's an interesting day in which it starts. Now, the research that I had done on this was started back in 2010 when I was trying to find something important for dates in March. And the one thing that I found which I thought was important is that there was the belief that aliens were going to descend to Earth. We were going to have either disclosure or alien occupation on the 21st of March. Okay. I didn't see it, but we're expecting it to happen sooner or later. But here's the interesting thing. When you start with March 21st, which is the first day of spring, you can then, first full day of spring, you can then go forward to 390 days, and where does it bring you? Right at Passover in 2014, April 14th, 2014. The synchronicity of the numbers here scare me, if you want to call it that, because we see things that have been carried out on being played by the numbers. So the Vatican, essentially, for all intents and purposes, was captured by the Knights Templar, if you want to call them that still, and they're still around, but those elite, essentially, whom the Jesuits submit themselves to, captured the Vatican on 3/13. So we can only expect that something is going to happen in future dates where we see things line up. Now, according to biblical prophecy, what things have to happen yet? One world order. We have a collapse here in the United States, financial collapse. It's not just going to be here, it's going to be global. Now, some countries already start trying to prevent this. You have China working with their BRICS countries, which is Brazil, India, Russia, and China, or Brazil, Russia, India, and China. Now there's a bunch of other second and third world countries which have joined BRICS, and they are trying to develop their own currency. So those countries will still be able to do trading. But if there's a collapse, and it's a worldwide collapse, then they're going to look for a worldwide solution. And a year ago, last October, as I recall, the Vatican was calling for a one world financial order, a one world financial system. Why would the Vatican call for one world financial system? They got churches in every country. They don't have to make any money changing. It all comes in and goes right to the one account. It works very simple. It's a simplification of things. So we're going to see this happen. But the problem is when we see this happen, think of the Depression of the 1930s, only worse, because in the 1930s, most of our food wasn't manufactured. It was mostly grown. So now most of the food's manufactured. And if we run into a collapse, you're going to run into all sorts of problems right down the line until they can get the system kicked over again. Now, what's really scary about this is exactly what they say they're going to do in the protocols of the learned elders of Zion. And I don't care what anybody says about the protocols, whether you believe it's a hoax or whether you believe it's the truth. If you read it, it reads like a blueprint for the last 100 years, and they're not done. So, hoax or no hoax, pretty darn accurate in my opinion. So we can look for change. Now, if we see that change come up, a new world order, according to the protocol, what they are telling us is that they are going to inflict a situation that we will beg them to come help us with, and it's going to be a situation that's going to be inflicted by our own governments, which leads you to wonder why the United States is looking to Russia to bring troops into the United States. There's a lot of word that 15,000 Russian troops have now occupied FEMA District 3, which encompasses approximately 200 miles around Washington, D.C. So whether they're actually there or not, I haven't seen them, but a lot of people are reporting that. I keep on seeing these posts coming up over and over again. A lot of people have been concerned about natural disasters happening. Yep, they're going to get worse. Interesting thing, earthquakes went up significantly starting 1998. And since then, they've increased 700%. This is a biblical prophecy. There'll be earthquakes in one place after another. Biblical prophecy. There'll be wars in one place after another. There'll be food shortages in one place after another. We've seen a major spike in food prices because of the drought we had last summer. When we get into the more complicated prophecies in Revelation, the Revelation, the 8th chapter, holds a whole bunch of interesting prophecies which have already taken place, in my opinion. The first one starts off with the trumpet blast, where a third of the earth is burned up and droughts spring up all over the place. When you look at what NASA has a satellite that photographs the fires on Earth, and it looks like a third of the earth is burning up. Now, we see a lot of flooding going around on the planet right now, and literally thousands of people are being killed in flooding. But it's this quick water which drenches the land, washes off, causes devastation, and then watch the weather patterns change, and they'll all start to burn up. And the big problem that we're facing right now is HAARP wars. They make a bad situation worse. So we've got major weather situations. The next one is interesting. It's Revelation 8:9, and John says, I saw something like a burning mountain being thrown into the sea, and a third of the sea was turned to the blood of a dead man, and a third of the souls in the sea died, and a third of the boats were wrecked. What John didn't tell us is that BP and Halliburton got blamed for it. And because that's exactly what we saw in the BP Gulf disaster. The next one is the Nibiru prophecy, and the next one is the Wormwood prophecy, which a lot of people contribute to Nibiru, or some sort of a satellite, or I say meteorite, that is headed this way. I disagree, because there's a prophecy which deals with that in Revelation, the 6th chapter, which we'll talk about in a minute. But in Revelation 8, 10, and 11 and 12, it talks about the wormwood prophecy. Now, it says a star falls from heaven. Stars are nuclear reactors, we know that. And it says that it poisons a third of the rivers and a third of the fountains, the drinking water. It says that it turns these waters to wormwood. It makes them bitter. And the men drink these waters and die. I don't think it's any real coincidence that you pronounce wormwood in Russian Chernobyl. And people still don't understand the full problems that Chernobyl has caused. A lot of it has been covered up. It's still an issue, even though it's literally been covered up with concrete. The Russians are building a dome over the top of it because it still leaks radiation. But we've got something which has been said to be 30,000 times worse than Chernobyl in Fukushima. And Fukushima already has poisoned the drinking waters of the northern hemisphere. It's caused a lot of problems in infants on the west coast, all the way from Baja to Anchorage. So that's a problem which is burning out of control. They've said that they don't have the technology to fix it. They don't expect to have the technology to fix it until 40 years from now. Where does that leave us? Makes you wonder, regardless of what happens within the next couple of years. But we're going to see major change going on, and we're going to see this one world order, this new world government come about. Essentially, it's already here, just like we have aliens already here. It's just that we don't have the official okie dokie that they're here. More people have cited UFOs, have reported their contacts with aliens. Alfred, I'm sure that you know this better than anybody else, being involved in exopolitics and on this end of the business. Haven't you seen reports of sightings and people interacting with extraterrestrials going up over the past years?
Sure.
It's obvious. And we can see the controls that are in place to move us into a new world order. They've already got the FEMA camps set up for the dissidents. They've already got the extra Spetsnaz troops here. They've already got the banking system on shaky ground. That they have their secret annual meetings to make sure everything is rolled out according to plan. We just need an event. And I'm surprised it hasn't happened already, considering the volatility of the Middle East. In the past 2 years, we've essentially watched like a fuse just burn right across northern Africa, right over to Syria, and we've got half of the nation of Islam up in arms against each other. And the Zionists must be laughing their butts off because everybody's leaving Israel alone, except Israel wants to start a fight with Iran. So it's like, gee, can't people just live in peace? But the thing that I don't understand is, why do you have essentially brother against brother in these countries fighting each other? Maybe because that's what the prophecies say, that the hand of every man's brother will be against his brother. So we see that going on. So it's just more confirmation that the prophecies, when you look at them the right way through scientific eyes and apply them to what is going on here today, we're seeing them line up. So what's left to happen? What things are left? Well, the New World Order. The mechanism's already in place. We just need to get the announcement. We need some event to happen, and it could be a number of events, anything from disclosure. I guarantee you, if you have a UFO land on the White House lawn, we're going to have a one world government in a matter of months. If you see complete economic collapse around the world, they're going to have to replace it with a currency, and we are going to see a one world currency. And when you do the research, you see that everything is geared toward this one world order. Even the Vatican is working toward a one world religion. Hallelujah. I don't know what else to say about that. We were all on the same track here. Now, this is kind of the strange part. It's like that the prophecy of Petros Romanos, the last pope. The last thing that you think that you would want to do is install a pope that you could link to Petros Romanos, which is supposed to bring down the Catholic Church, possibly all of religion. So why would you jump into that? When you look at the prophecies in Revelation, why would you allow the paradigms to start to come together in order to create the event? But that's what they're doing. And some people have argued, well, hey, maybe they are it's self-fulfillment of the prophecies. Yeah, maybe they are, maybe they're not. But regardless, they're going to get to a certain point where they can't self-fulfill anymore. Or it could be just that the prophecies are that accurate that there's nothing that they can do to escape what has been predestined. You see, this all starts with the violation of the prime directive toward planet Earth. We were supposed to develop as a family. We were supposed to develop with perfect DNA. We were supposed to have the direct connection to source, but we don't. The record says that we had alien intervention, our DNA was damaged, and we become subservient to not only the alien forces, but those whom they've given the right to rule to. And hence this world has found itself enmeshed in a Luciferian world of hatred. That's what it is. That's what it is. And now they're playing their hand, which is good, because now we can start to see how all of this comes together. So we can pretty much figure with the occultism that's going on in these different ecliptics that's going to happen over 2014, 2015. We can pretty much figure that we're going to see more than likely the change for the New World Order happening sometime after Passover, or let's say April 15th, Tax Day. Sometime after Tax Day of 2014, we are going to see some sort of major change toward that one world, New World Order. It could very well be disclosure. We don't know. Be prepared is the best thing that I can say. We get the New World Order established. It's not a far stretch of the imagination, and it's not just the biblical prophecies that say this. When you look into the more secular prophecies of how what people believe is that this one Antichrist will come to power, and all fingers kind of point toward Prince William. He fits the bill royally. He's got the ties, he's got the connections, and it's interesting when you read the protocol, he meets all their qualifications. And they say, even if we have to skip a generation to get to the right candidate, we will. Jump over Charles to get to William. Interesting, the protocol was published in 1908. Neither one of them were born. So how did they know that setup was going to come? So we'll have to watch what happens there. We're seeing members of the royal family throughout Europe. The older generation is stepping down. Queen Beatrix was the first one. The ruler of Belgium just abdicated to the next generation. So this is going to become more of a trend as the year goes on. And I think that we're going to see the Queen step down and let William take her place. The Queen's facing some situations now that they're trying to establish legally. But interestingly enough, they changed the law in England, as I understand. This is just a recent event where now, regardless of what Prince William's offspring will be, they will be the princess or prince of, interesting, I said princess first, of Cambridge. So they already are born with title, or they're not even born yet, and they are given title. And this is unprecedented by the Queen. It's a gift. So it looks like things are being determined up at the highest levels within the major players. Now, the three major players are the Vatican, Washington, D.C., and the City of London. And those are three independent city-states which also have biblical prophecies attached to them from Daniel, which we don't have time to get into tonight. But they are all three independent. They are not subject to rule by anyone but themselves. Interesting. So we've got a government that we think is running the United States, and the laws don't apply to them. They're not part of the United States. We elect people, send them to a different country so they can make rules for us. Isn't that interesting? Isn't that a strange scenario when you think about it? We get a one-world government in 2014. You can pretty much guess that sooner or later they are going to turn on religion, as Revelation 17 and 18 indicate, and also as the protocol describes under the heading, "We shall destroy God." And when that happens, that is going to be the split that we are looking for. That will be the actual split. And people who are looking for a positive timeline are going to coalesce. That seed of the woman is going to come together, and they're going to start doing something very important. They're going to start caring for each other. They're going to start showing love to one another, just as we are instructed back to the greatest commandment. Jesus said, we must love Yahweh our God with our whole heart, soul, and mind. Connect to source and hold it deep to yourself, because that's where we can draw energy from. You connect to the greatest energy of the whole multiverse, please, there's nothing that you can't do if you're given the power. But that's why we have to connect. The next thing is to connect to each other. Treat our neighbors as we do ourselves. We have love for ourselves. If we didn't, we wouldn't exist. We have love for our family. We have love for friends. I mean, somehow we draw the line at the border of our property and say, those people over there are nuts. We got to get past that paradigm. We have to get to the point where we care about them. Now, I'm not saying you got to go over and hug and kiss them, but if something should happen, would you rush over there to help? You see, that's where we have to start to focus. We have to start caring for others, because as this system starts to split, you're going to have those who care for others, the seed of the woman, and the serpent seed, who will be fighting among themselves, and that will be nothing but pure death. So in order to stay on the positive timeline, that is our choice. We need to do that, and it starts with self. It starts with having a sense of love for ourselves, connecting back to source, and then sharing it with others. And Alfred, that's what we do. That's what we do. We look, we study, we focus on this information that's being presented to us. It takes an internal fortitude to do that. It takes internal strength to look and see into what the possibilities are and to stay abreast of all of this stuff that's happening in this system of evil. And then how do we extract the greatness in ourselves to rise above it? You see, it's only by the hand of what we would call a miracle. It's tapping into the power of Source, which allows us to keep that positive thing. And it's interesting, there's Acts, the 2nd chapter, verses 17 and 18. It says, I will pour out some of my spirit upon all sorts of flesh, and they will prophesy in the last days. He says, even upon my men servants and my maid servants I shall pour out my spirit, and their old men will dream dreams, and their young men will see visions. And then it leads up to the interesting thing, and this is why I bring up the name Yahweh. And when you get to the end of, as that chapter unfolds, it says that there would be evidence given in the heavens above and signs given on the earth below. The earth below, we've seen earthquakes. We see this crazy weather that's happening around us. We see anomalies, fish dying, birds falling out of the air en masse. We see blood, rain, red rain coming out of the sky with no answer to where it's coming from. And didn't we just see the phenomena that we saw over Russia, which caught everyone's attention and started making us look up at the heavens? And what else do we see in the heavens? Unidentified flying aircraft. Unidentified flying objects. And again, it brings us back to the alien situation. So, that leaves us open for a whole new show in dealing with extra-dimensional life forms and life forms that we cannot detect in the three-dimensional world. Remember, we only have a narrow scope of visual light, so something can literally be walking around us and we would never know it. However, these entities are mostly interdimensional, which means that they are not limited to the same rules that we are. However, they cannot leave the third dimension. They're stuck here. And the cleanup crew's coming in. And that's the great part. And this is where the paradigm of Armageddon, everybody freaks out when they hear Armageddon. Armageddon is not the end of the world. It's the end of the New World Order. See, that's the great thing. It's not the end of the world, it's the end of the New World Order. And when you look at Revelation 19, those who are judged by the King of Kings and the armies of the multiverse are the kings of the world, the mighty men, the military commanders, and their support staff. Those are the ones who are judged. It's not we the people. It's not the little people who are trying to eke out a living, trying to understand what's going on in this time that we live in. The people who are complaining and saying, can this system get any crazier? Hold on, yes it can. Never ask that question. I found myself one time and thinking, wow, can my life get any, could I get any worse? Could life just get any worse than what it was at that particular time? I felt like I was at the bottom of the barrel. And you know what? I found out what the underside of the barrel looked like. So never ask that question. We need to stay positive. There's no reason to live in fear. Love kills fear faster than anything else. So here's the good news. The difficult time that we are going to be seeing in this cultic ecliptic of 2014-2015 should probably be over in 2016. And the good news for 2017 is, interestingly enough, we get what is called the end of a Jubilee year within the Hebrew calendar. Now, you might be able to move this date one way or the other. It can either come in 1916 or come in 2016 or 2017, because the calendar was moved, and we don't know if they moved it back 6 months or moved it ahead 6 months. So that's one of the reasons you can't give it an exact date. I can't say that unless you can line up the solar or heavenly markers like we have here with the 2014 and the 2015, all of the ecliptics happening upon these Hebrew holidays, which has never happened before in history. That is significant. The timing for this is all being kept in the stars, and we cannot stop the movement of the galaxy or the universe. And that brings us to a very interesting situation. A lot of people think about, Nibiru is on a lot of people's minds. And that brings us to the prophecy in Revelation, the 6th chapter and the 12th through the 15th verse, where John says that there was a great earthquake, and then he saw the sun being darkened, and the moon being turned to blood, and the stars falling from the heavens, like when a hot, heavy wind blows figs off of a tree. If you have an acorn tree in the fall, if you get those fall storms that could come through, you go outside and all of a sudden you got all the acorns laying on the ground, or a bunch of apples that weren't ripe, but the wind blew them off. The stars are going to come falling through the skies like that. So we'll see this. It says that the islands and the mountains themselves shall be removed from their places. And it also says that the rich, the mighty men, the powerful will seek shelter in the rock masses, and they will call out to the rock masses to cover them. So John even gets to see the deep underground military bunkers. But this event, where the sun is darkened, the moon turned to blood, what we see as stars falling from the heaven. If we had a brown dwarf star passing by us and the sun, it could very well block out the sun. Brown dwarf stars rain iron. So we would see iron particles coming through the night sky. We would see what would look like a sun with wings, perhaps, a Nibiru. And a lot of people looking for this. I haven't seen any photographic evidence which has made me totally convinced that it's there. I've seen some pretty interesting pictures, but don't let this catch you off guard. We've got Comet ISON, and with the Hopi prophecy, we're going to have to watch Comet ISON this November and see how bright it gets. Researchers are saying that it's supposed to be 5 times as bright as the moon. I've heard even higher than that, but we're going to have to watch. That'll be a sign that no one on Earth shall miss. Now, unfortunately, comets don't have a real good reputation. Historically, they have been bearers of doom. Historically. So, Comet ISON is supposed to be out of our vision by January of 2014. Let's hope that this transition isn't too bad and that we can all stay alert to the things that are happening on this planet. It's hard to say for sure what things will happen, what things won't happen, when they're going to happen, but we know that these things are in play. We know that these things are going to happen. And they've played, the great thing is that the one world order, those who are in charge of this earth have played their hand. And when I say that, I'm talking about the Initiative 2045. Now, this isn't biblical. This is the plan of the Illuminati. This is the plan of the global elite. Seek it out. Do the research. The 2045 Initiative is a game plan to transform all humans who are still alive into machines. It is a transhumanism agenda, and what they hope to accomplish is to get us all to be nanobots, and it'll be carried out as if you remember the $6 million man, we can rebuild them. That technology is being implemented on soldiers that are coming out of Afghanistan and Iraq who have had limbs blown off. So they're rebuilding soldiers. There's a lot of work that DARPA is doing into this advanced technology of robotics and humans controlling the mind, using the mind just to control what the robot is doing. And so there's an integration going on. And by 2045, they hope to meet their agenda, and if they do, there will be no more biological humans on this planet. Humans will have become an extinct species. That is the agenda of the New World Order and the elite of this world. We had all better prayed that the prophecies are correct. Because if they are, when this all ends, and it will very, very shortly as we see these prophecies align, we will see the end of this satanic system of evil. This Luciferian, child-sacrificing, murdering world will be gone. Will be gone are the chemtrails, the Fukushima and the radiation, the genetically modified organisms in the Crimeas that they are developing. That will all be gone. Their ruthless characters will be eradicated, and best of all, those rebel alien life forms which are backing them and have been giving us the technology for the last 100 years, and it's actually been documented for the last 5,000 years that they've been giving us alien technology, that they've been giving us advanced technology, and that's borne out by the book of Enoch, where Enoch says, hey, they taught us astrology, they taught us metallurgy, they taught us herbs, they taught us how to read the signs in the sky, and they taught us how to make armor and weaponry. Interesting. That was what was recorded, that the Watchers taught the very early civilization, pre-Nuavian flood. This is the story of the Watchers and the Nephilim. Interestingly enough, the Nephilim are still with us, but in spirit only, which is good, and that's why we have Poltergeist with us today. If we have a Crimean rebel alien army being genetically manufactured by the military, it would certainly be a great host for the souls of the Nephilim. This may sound a little far-fetched, but if you talk to anyone who's had a near-death experience, and they will tell you, death does not stop when your body does. Or I should say, life does not stop when your body does. Death does not stop our soul. We continue to go on. Now, what exactly happens to us and where we go is a totally another story.
Right. Yeah. Now let me try and kind of sum up what you're saying. If we look at a timeline, what you're saying is that 2014 and 2015 may be sort of a very an attempted implementation and rollout of the New World Order.
Rollout would be a better way to look at it, Alfred, because so many parts of it have already been implemented.
Yeah, right. Rollout, but that is just a temporary phenomenon that lasts 390 days, you said, or something?
Well, no, we're actually in this siege period of 390 days.
Oh.
It's a countdown. So we can expect this to start to shake out. This is, in the prophecy, this is a siege, a prophetic siege against the city of Jerusalem, or against God's people, if you want to call it that. Now, nothing happened under the siege. When we look at historically what happened with the siege of Jerusalem with Titus, Titus encircled the city and camped out for 3 months, just sat back. Nobody came in, nobody went out.
Yeah.
And then the attack happened. Interestingly enough, he did this on Passovers when he came rolling up to Jerusalem, caught the whole city full of people. So, on Nisan 14, Passover is always Nisan 14. This is a recurring date. Its synchronicity is phenomenal in history. So we can figure something being rolled out, New World Order, officially New World Order. Like I said, if we get disclosure, it's I like what Reagan said. Reagan said that we would put our differences aside immediately, and we would all come together if we were facing an alien threat from outside this planet.
And so that might be kind of a false flag.
Could very well be.
Yeah.
But now, along with that false flag, and you see this opens up prophecies in Revelation, the 9th chapter, where the fallen angel opens up the key, the pit. He's given the key that opens up the pit of the abyss, and he opens it up, and a Crimea is released upon the earth.
What does a Crimea mean?
Well, a Crimea is an animal that is made up of many different parts of different animals.
I see.
So it's not any one species. It's not like we're going to get a herd of lions that come across
Okay.
the plains eating
Okay.
people. The crime, what is described, and this is, I hope it's symbolic talk, but what is described as coming out of this pit of the abyss is a plague, a locust-like plague, and what is released is something that looks like a horse's body with a human face, long hair like a woman, and a scorpion's tail. And pretty
Right.
evil looking.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
And it's also got the teeth of a lion.
No,
So-
right. So 2014 and 2015 are pretty stressful,
Yeah. We're
heavy
gonna be
duty.
stressed. There's no doubt
However,
about that.
at some point, there is an Armageddon, which is positive ET intervention. Is that it?
That is correct, but
Right.
now that is the last sign or the last thing that's supposed to happen before this, according to the prophecy, is a Nibiru type event.
I mean,
We are going,
Prior-
we are
you
going
mean-
to see a planetary system go zinging past us, which will darken the sun for
yeah. I mean,
3 days.
there's going to be New World Order. While there's New World Order, there'll be a Nibiru come through. Then the positive ETs are going to come in, and then we're going to have
That's it.
good times.
That's it.
So we just got
That's
to
it.
hunker down.
hunker
So
down. be
hunker down,
prepared.
and we'll get through it. So
Absolutely.
it's like
Absolutely.
New World Order, Nibiru. The good ETs come in with their Armageddon, and then we have the positive timeline really kicks in
Absolutely.
around 2017.
Yeah, that's where
These
the
are-
prophecies are indicating too. Now,
Yeah,
like I
yeah,
said,
yeah,
we
no,
might be
right,
off
right.
a year one way or the
No,
other.
no, no, and this is all one. This is all just looking at, as you said, prophecy is a
Prophecy is not an exact science.
what? Not an exact science. Okay.
If it were, my job would be easy, and we would all know exactly what to do. You know, it's like, okay, well, the airlines industry works on what they hope is an exact science of time, so they can leave and arrive within their parameters. And if you're not there at the gate at the time that they say to be at the gate, you're going to miss your flight. Well, this is something where we kind of have to show up at the gate like the day before,
Yeah.
because we don't know exactly when that
When
flight is going to
It's
leave.
gonna leave. Okay. Now, a couple of questions. First of all, if people want to follow you and follow your updates as we're now coming into the final 500 or something, like the final 4 years or whatever.
3.5 years, and it's
Yeah.
actually
Yeah,
a
yeah.
prophecy which starts on it's another prophecy which, if you calculate from
Yeah.
March 21st, it
March-
falls into play here. There's like
Yeah.
3 prophecies which
So-
line up with
so-
that date.
So that's March 21st, 2013.
Correct.
So we are in countdown mode.
Yes.
We are
We
in
certainly
countdown
are.
mode because today's July 9th, 2013, and we started a countdown on March 21st, 2013.
Absolutely.
Okay, great. Now, if people want to follow your updates, how can they do so?
Follow me on Facebook. It's the easiest way to do so. Become a friend. Join me on Facebook. And the reason why I say there is it's the most convenient for everyone to come together at one place. You don't have to go, well, I'm going to go over to this person's website and see what they have to say today.
Yeah.
No, you go on Facebook, you see what all your friends have to say, and then
Yeah.
you can go follow my post right there.
Okay, good.
So request to be a friend. I've got over 1,000 slots open left. I guess they cut you
Okay.
off at 5,000 or something
Yeah.
like that. You could always follow the posts, and I'm
Yeah.
more than happy to do that. But the other thing is, I've got a lot of really great Facebook friends that post some really fantastic stuff.
Right.
And I don't have to go far to get my information anymore. So,
Right.
that page has become a dynamic page and has gained a life of its own.
Excellent.
But join me there. You can always message me. I do my best to answer all questions.
Right. And you also have a radio program.
We do, Michael Vera, who basically owns Late Night in the Midlands. We do World Watchers on Wednesday nights at 9 o'clock Eastern. The show runs from 9 till midnight. We also have we do something that nobody else has done, to the best of my knowledge. We have a financial expert that comes on and joins us about the 11 o'clock hour. And so we talk about what is going on in the world, what we need to be focused on. We'll bring in guests from time to time, and so we'll have a guest speaker that will, talk to us just like we're doing now. You've been on our show, thank you. And then we get the financial report. Well, what's going on now? If you have two nickels to rub together, it might be a good idea to listen to that. Or if you care what happens tomorrow within the world and the countries around the world, seeing as finances play a very large part, that becomes a very important part of our program too, and people love that segment. So join us there. It's a good rounded show, and we love call-ins so people can call us in. And lastly, I do have my website. It's Peter Kling, www.peterkling.com. You can find my book, Letters to Earth, You Can't Survive Armageddon. I never intended to write a book. All this research that I did that started way back when, I did because I needed to know the answers. It's funny, I lost a debate once at an early age, and so it made me do a lot of homework. Those type of things kind of leave you. You got to find the answers. And I took the biblical stand against somebody who took the evolutionary stand, and the best I could do was stalemate them. But now I can conquer both by, hey, it's neither total creation nor total evolution. It's genetic engineering. Makes much more sense.
Very good. Very good. Well, finally, I'd like to ask you, what words would you like to leave our viewers with to help us navigate our way through these 3.5 years?
Alfred, the truth is not complicated. And I'm going to be honest, the vast majority of religion doesn't have the truth. They teach dogma. The truth is not complicated. So we have to be aware of the world around us, and we have to listen, not to the things that just sound good. If I came out with a brand new diet and said, hey, you can lose 100 pounds just by eating ice cream, wow, how many people would jump on that bandwagon? No. We can't do something just because it sounds good, because sometimes it takes an effort. Jesus said that it would be easier for a camel to get through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to get into the kingdom. He said, broad and spacious is the road that goes to destruction. So many people just want to come home, sit down in front of the TV, and flick on the tube and just go horizontal, put their mind in horizontal hold and just absorb the information that Hollywood bombards us with. That's not going to cut it. We need to take action, and where we need to take action starts with ourselves, and it starts in love. It's not complicated. It's simple. But we have to show that love all the way around. Follow the greatest commandment. Love Yahweh your God with your whole heart, soul, and mind, and to love your neighbors as you do yourself. The other thing that we are told to do, and this was the message it's the only message that Jesus gave his disciples. Tell everybody I'm coming back with the armies of the multiverse, and I'm going to set my kingdom up here on earth, and this Luciferian kingdom is out of here. And folks, just go check out the 2045 agenda, see what that initiative is all about, see how serious they are about it, and then look at the prophecies and pray they are right. I think they are. We were violated 6,000 years ago. It's time for us to get on a positive timeline. And we have a fantastic future. When I was about 19 years old, one of my mentors, who was a very old man at the time, looked me in the eye. It was the last time I actually saw him, and he said this. He said, your future is in the stars. And I didn't understand what he meant by that. But I do now. Our future is in the stars. We are not earthbound for much longer. Now, I'm not talking about, oh, we're going to ascend somewhere. No. We're going to clean up this planet. We're going to have our DNA repaired. And then once our DNA is made perfect, we get to go on to populate the other planets within the galaxy and within the universe. There's a lot of planets out there that are just like Earth, or very similar to Earth. And the children of the woman and Yahweh's seed, those will be the ones who will go on in a state of perpetual love. The human race is going to die. The human family is going to be born. Don't we love our family? Aren't we all part of one big family? If we can get rid of the religion and the government, the borders, the wars would stop. We'd have peace. If we could work together, we'd have peace. But we'll never have peace as long as we have religion and government riding our back, which are influenced by outside demonic, alien, satanic forces that pretend to be the good guys, the Galactic Federation of Light, whatever backstory they're giving. Don't be deceived. Pay attention. Be prepared. Store some food. Stay in love. And with that, I'll say love and blessings to all. Let's live long and prosper.
Thank you, Peter.
Alfred, my pleasure. Always a pleasure being on your show, sir.
Thank you very much.